what's up? So I'm going to show you guys how I recreate the guitar tone from the record using my STL tonality plugin. I'm also going to show you an alternate tone and get as close as possible, but also try and improve upon the album tone as well. But before we get into that, I just want to let you guys know that I now have a Patreon set up. So if you want to see more content like this, you want to keep me doing music and help support Sylosis, then you can become a Patreon member. There's various different tiers, different perks, and access to a lot of behind the scenes footage as well. So let's get into it. Here's how the guitars sound right now. So this has some EQ on the master bus, which I'm going to turn off. It's a multi-band compressor there too. And to begin with, I'm just going to look at one of the guitars from the quad tracks. And we're going to listen to it in mono. So this is my STL tonality plugin. This is the amp I'm using in the settings. Before we go any further though, I just want to let you guys know, when I mixed the record, when it came to the guitar tone, I wanted to reamp the guitar tone that we had got recording with Scott, and I didn't have my block letter, didn't have my dual rectifier or my triple X because they had all been shipped to Italy, where they were getting converted and captured to make this plugin. So what I did have was my 6505, near enough the same amp, but the block letter does sound a bit different, but they're obviously, you know, super close sounding. The most important thing though is the cab and the mic placement. That is where most of the tone comes from. And all of the impulse responses were done in the UK, so these cabs were here with me. Another thing to note is that the guitars that we tracked, the DI tracks that we tracked, were a little bit quieter than I'd normally record at home. So you'll see I'm boosting the input and the gain's a bit higher than I would normally go. And same with, if you look at the boost here, I don't normally go above the midway point. And that's because the DIs are just a little bit quieter. I could just turn them up in Cubase, but I didn't. I've just done it on the plugin. So the gain is up higher than it would normally be. Normally I'd have it like somewhere around here for that amp. So these are the settings that I've used. This is how the guitar sounds in mono, just one of the guitar tracks. And most importantly, this is the cab. It was the 2000 Mesa Boogie oversized cab, which is right behind me here. It was the top right speaker with a single SM57. So this speaker, even though it's on the left of the interface, is actually the top right speaker. As you can see, I went a little bit to the left of center. And what I did before getting into the mix of this current mix, which is different to the album mix, at least for the guitars, is I tried to match the mic placement and the sound from the reamp tracks that I did with this plugin, just using the SM57 to nail the exact mic placement. So that was pretty much where it sounded close enough to identical to me. Not quite identical, but you know, 95% there maybe. What I didn't have on the album, what I didn't use, I did have it, was a 421 microphone, which I like to blend in. This is where I'm going to start, you know, making some slight tweaks and some improvements, I think, on the album guitar tone. I can't remember why I didn't set up the 421. I think I just liked the tone I was getting off the 57 at the time, and I used that for all 4 rhythm tracks of the chord tracks. So let's now move on to a different tone, which I've got off the quad tracks, which are the separate left and right guitar tracks that are a little bit quieter in the mix. So now we're going to check out a different tone on the quad tracks. So I did 2 tracks left and right of the main guitars, then another 2 tracks left and right, a little bit quieter in the mix, different tone, and panned inwards a little bit more. So what I didn't do on the record was set up a different tone, and this time I'm going to be using the dual rectifier. So I'm on this channel. I'm pretty sure that both of these channels are the same. It's just if you've got the real amp and you're playing live, you can have one with less gain, more volume, whatever you want to do. So I think they're near enough the same. We're in modern mode. This is really important that you just check out what these switches are doing. There's modern, vintage, and raw sounds. I stick to modern, but you can make the amp sound good in all of the modes. When in modern mode though, I back off the presence quite a lot. As you can see, it's just on 1.3. So these are the settings on the dual rectifier. Now a bit more tone or the tone knob a little bit further up than halfway, which is normally I don't go that high, but for a rectifier, they're a little bit more flubby in the low end, so I tighten them up a bit more with a little bit more high end, and boosting the signal just a bit more. And this time round, I've used a Marshall cab. So this is the top right speaker of the Marshall, which is a vintage 30. Now, in terms of how this looks, if this was the real thing, I don't know if the mic placement and the tone I've got there would actually add up to looking that far off, but I'm just going by ear, which is what we should all be trying to do. And I've also blended in a 41 as well, so this is that tone. So like I said, these extra 2 guitar tracks of the quad tracks are panned not fully left and right, but just a little bit more in. They, I think it just helps thicken up the guitar tone, and they just sit better with the other guitars when they're not panned at the exact same place. So this is how all the guitars sound all together, but with no mix EQ. And then in the mix. Then I'm going to show you what I've got on the mix. So this is pretty standard. A lot of people know about this. This is a multi-band compressor, just compressing the low end. So it just kicks in on the palm mutes where the low end kind of builds up. And this is the EQ I've got going on. So whenever I A-B against guitar tones that I really like with my own raw guitar tones and do an EQ match, it turns out that I would always use the low and high pass filter kind of standard amount, but loads of my favorite guitar tones on records have a ton of high end boosted in, to me, what seems like it's not just a cab thing, but that's actually been boosted in the mix. And I think especially if you're boosting like around 10K or above, there's not so much, tone there, so you're not necessarily just bringing up loads and loads of high end, even if you're boosting it like 5 dB in that area. It just tends to kind of just add some life and some liveliness and some presence to your tone, but just doesn't make it sound dull and neutered and that kind of thing. So let's listen to that in the mix, and I'm going to engage it and turn it off. Even though I'm boosting it by quite a large amount, it's really subtle to hear the difference. And you're mainly just hearing probably some of the signal that it's bringing up in this area. Then we've got a boost around here, just where kind of like the teeth and the aggression of the guitar tone comes from. A little bit of a, just not, quite a wide notch, or I don't know if you really call that a notch, just below 4K. There's a lot of like 4.3 that you get off the 421 mic, so I think that's what's coming through there. This is a signal, frequency that usually just tends to whistle a bunch on most guitar cabs. This area here between like 1 and 2K can just sound a bit more like cardboardy and just nasal, that I don't really like, and that kind of gets in the way of the vocal as well. This bit here around like 670 to 710 depending on the cabinet. This is where your cab will like make a kind of harsh whistle kind of sound, or like honking kind of mid-range whistle that I kind of notch out a little bit. Doing a little bit more taming of the low end and the palm mutes here. As you can see, I've got this set up so it's a dynamic EQ. And I'm doing a bit of a boost here, just around 80 Hertz, just below, and then a high pass. So let's hear the guitars in the mix with the EQ on. And I'm going to turn the EQ off halfway through. Cool, so next I'm going to show you an alternate guitar tone I've got set up. So I'm a big fan of a lot of guitar tones that Rob Flynn's got in Machine Head and on the Roadrunner United record. I think some of those guitar tones are amazing, and a lot of those records have been mixed by Colin Richardson or Andy Sneap. And yeah, I'm just going to try and emulate, or I have tried to emulate some of those kind of tones here. So I'm going to turn off the mix EQ. I've actually got two instances of EQ there on, and the multi-band compressor. I'm going to check out again just one single mono track. So one thing I know about Rob Flynn and the guitar tones he gets, he has a 5150 block letter, usually uses Marshall cabs, the straight ones, 1960 Bs I think, and at least on a lot of the records that I like, with vintage 30s in. And I know Colin Richardson loves 421 microphones. He probably asks or requests that one of those is on the cab as well. So got those elements, but the main thing about a lot of Machine Head tones and tones that Rob Flynn gets is that he uses the rhythm channel on the 5150. So the rhythm channel doesn't have as much gain, so I've got more gain up here on the amp. It's not quite as filtered on the front end, so it's not quite as tight in the low end, but it's still a good tight metal sound, and you can afford a little bit more of the high end on this one. So these are the settings again. The DI's kind of quiet, and then we've got the Marshall cab here, 57, 41, leaning a bit more towards the 41 as you can see here in the blend, and here's how that tone sounds. And in this case, all four guitar tracks that I've got here are the same tone. So let's listen to all of them together. So already I can hear too much of that 1 to 2K area that is a bit kind of nasal. So let's get the multi-band compressor on, same kind of thing, and then let's look at the EQ I've got. So a little bit more heavy-handed with some of the EQ moves on this one. Evidently there was a little bit of quite a big spike around just under 3.2K. Let's listen to that first. Again, bringing up some of that high end, ultra high end, I'd call it. Anything above 10K or including 10K, that's just something that I call it ultra high end. I don't know why, it's not ultra anything. Bringing up just a bit below 4K, that's where kind of the bite of the guitar tone is. That's where it sort of cuts through the mix. As I said, yeah, I felt like there was a lot of 1 to 2K, so I've got quite a big notch there, or a dip even. And bringing out some of that sort of more whistly area and the more honky area of the mids. I'm just going to try something here as well. Just going to add some of that kind of lower mid. Just fill out the sound a bit more. Narrow this actually just a little bit. And then evidently I felt like I needed some more EQ to happen, so yeah. Bringing down some of that 421 area, I guess. And some of that kind of higher fizz on the cab. Cool, so let's hear those in the mix. So now let's check out all three guitar tones, all three being the actual album guitar tone that I reamped here with the 6505 at the top, and then the first tone I showed you, and then the secondary tone for the different flavor. So here's the original reamped guitars that I did here. And we're going to listen to the STL guitars, the original tone that I showed you guys today. Very similar, as you can hear, but we've got 2 tracks of dual rectifier and the Marshall cab blended in, which wasn't in the original album guitar tone. And then this other guitar tone here on the rhythm channel, the 5150. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy this video, please consider joining my Patreon.